Hare Krishna, Gauranga. I'm going back to back today, going all out. I wanted to get right on to the next 30 key verse, and of course also because these are the catut, sloki verses of the Bhagavad-Gita, the four main key ones. I wanted to really try and keep rolling with it while it's fresh in everybody's minds, and fresh also in my own as well. So this is 10.9. This is the second one in, and let's see how it goes. We can have a look at this one. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Maschittamad gata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantaschamam nityam tushanticha ramanticha. Translation. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pasachadi Satarani Mukam Kruti Vachalam Pangam Langayati Girim Yatkivatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramanandamaravam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Nama Shreshtam Manama Pisachit Putra Atras Rupam Rupam Tashdvajamurupamatarim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Horadika Madhavasham Praptoya Shapratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnato Shmi Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Janananda Goswami. Now I've already had a look at this purport ahead, of course, and again Srila Prabhupada seems to be stressing similar points. Why is it that he does that? Because one, speaking for myself, most of us are conditioned souls, so it means that we're very forgetful, we're easily disturbed, we're easily distracted. So reading and studying in such a deep way, and more importantly, retaining this knowledge, is not an easy thing. So Prabhupada, throughout all his books, is always reminding of these points. Krishna, Supreme Person of Godhead. Chant His holy name, Hare Krishna. Free yourself from the concept of the body and the false ego, mind intelligence, false ego. He's always saying, we're the soul, not the body. These things he's reminding us constantly. And these seem like such basic ideas. But until your foundation is so strongly built, then you can build on top. There's this idea of a skyscraper building, for example. The higher you want to go, the deeper your foundation has to be. So, when the architect or engineer is going to the proposed site, he starts looking at the soil consistency. He starts looking at the wind factor. He starts looking at the different buildings around. Are they sinking in the soil, or how are they holding up? How would they affect the distance I need to build this other skyscraper next to it, so on and so forth? Is there any water? Is there any flooding? Is there any hills or any trees or anything that can affect? Well, not trees in it, but you know what I mean. If it's a house or whatever it is, the different factors, of what could affect because this is a massive project. It's a multi-million-pound project to put up a skyscraper or a monument or whatever it is. So they look at these things. How good the soil is, to how deep we can put in, the foundation. And when you build on your foundation and its foundation is strong, then you can't be shaken over so easily. So Prabhupada is constantly building our foundation, so then we can go deeper into the more advanced stuff. But this is advanced stuff, controlling the mind. That's a very advanced thing in this modern world. Understanding we're the soul, not the body. That's advanced. Most people don't. Most people do think they're the body. They're fully convinced they're the body. So these are things that we should never get tired of hearing. And this is the characteristic of our pure devotees we're about to hear. They are never tired of hearing Krishna Katha. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. So we're saying 24 hours. How is that possible? When we're sleeping in bed, right? Mind's not on Krishna, but it can be. A devotee who reads Krishna books, Srila Prabhupada says, at night before going to bed, will have Krishna conscious dreams. Because what are we dreaming about? We're just dreaming about previous past life experiences, or or our desires are forming up, or the PlayStation games that you watched when you were a kid, all the movies, all the books that you read, all the adventures and trips and mistrips and misfits that you got up to in your life are just replaying back in various weird and wonderful ways. Some are real, some are not real, some are mix-ups of the, you go down into an old house of yours and suddenly you're in that old house, but then you're somewhere else. It was the old house, that was the real part, and then all of a sudden you're flying, shooting, jumping, rolling, experiencing so many things with this person, that person, this dog, that cat, the sky, the air, this planet, this thing, so many permutations, variations of pleasure when you go to sleep, right? So, but if you feed the mind Krishna Kata, the wonderful Krishna Leela from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill, we just had the other day, Govardhan Puja, sorry. Krishna killing Trinavarta, or Aristasura, or Kamsa, or the whole pastime of the Shamantaka jewel. Such adventure, such thrilling action. Fill our minds with those pastimes. And at least if you're experiencing the big battle of Kurukshetra in your dreams, then at least Krishna's there, sitting in the midst of the two armies with Arjuna, right? At least if someone's charging down, shooting bows and arrows, it's Arjuna and the Pandavas fighting against the Kauravas, as opposed to, whatever it is, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, or whatever things that we got up to previously, or still do sometimes, maybe, I don't know. So we can be 24 hours. And these pure devotees, they minimize. I'm not suggesting this. Some people do. We do need varying degrees of sleep. Prabhupada used to talk about the 6 hours program. Taking 6 hours, and it was a thing. Devotees would go down at 10, get up at 4. Some devotees even less. I've heard several senior devotees speaking about going down at like 11:30, waking up at 2:30, waking up at 3. And of course we know Srila Prabhupada himself took practically 2 or 3 hours sleep, complete bodily functions reduced down to a minimum, and we know of course the Goswamis, Raghunath Das Goswami, they were performing unbelievable, like absolutely impossible almost austerities for the modern man, taking some little bit of buttermilk every day, sitting out in the boiling hot sun of Vrindavan, at Radha Kund, just chanting all day, almost 20 hours, 22 hours chanting, it's practically impossible for us. We can sit on our desk for 2-3 hours, get fidgety, get agitated, and then if it's too hot we have to have the fan on, open the windows. If it's too cold, the windows are closed, get the radiators on. We're swung by the body at all times, but it is possible. 24 hours Krishna consciousness is possible. It's just a case of building up slowly, and regularly maintaining. One of the points of vow, I mentioned this at the start of Kartik and at Purushottam Mass, the idea of taking a vow is, one, the pleasure in actually sticking to it. So you create this amazing feeling, of conquering the mind, by achieving that goal of sticking it out at the end, and of course you achieve all the mercy and so on and so forth for making a powerful vrat, So stick to our regulations, It's just really good, and it'll become spontaneous after a while, And there is a bit here that talks about a devotee, about an advanced devotee. Prabhupada says here, this is 2.3.12 Bhagavatam, pure devotional service, the change in heart. Jnanam yad apratinvrita gunorme chakram Atma prashada utyatra guneshva ashangaha Kaivalya samata patastvata bhakta yogaha Ko nivrito hari kata suratim nakuryat. Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Very beautiful poetry there, Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment, and being transcendental, it is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? So who would not want to take to that knowledge that frees you from this ocean of material existence? And then Prabhupada says, The complete functional activities of a pure devotee are always engaged in the service of the Lord, and thus the pure devotees exchange feelings of ecstasy between themselves and relish transcendental bliss. This transcendental bliss is experienced even in the stage of devotional practice, sadhana avastha, if properly undertaken by the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So even in the sadhana stage, where you're still really trying to follow the rules and regulations, chanting your rounds, rising early in the morning, taking your bath, doing your gayatris, eating your prasadam, offering your prasadam, going to the temple at the weekends, doing your puja, these things, even at that sadhana stage, still you can actually be achieving that bliss. And when you rise above that and become into this spontaneous devotion, Raganuga Bhakti platform, pure Krishna consciousness, pure prema, then you're just doing the same thing, but you're doing it because you want to do it, because you're not feeling forced, you're just completely flowing smoothly, gliding through life in Krishna consciousness. And it also says a few quotes from Prabhupada, pure devotees are so absorbed in the thought of Krishna that they have no other engagement. Although they may seem to think or act otherwise, they are always thinking of Krishna. The smile of such a Krishna-conscious person is so attractive that simply by smiling he wins so many admirers, disciples and followers. So this is the idea. Devotees like that are beautiful, they're radiant with their realization and their pure Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada goes on to say here, in the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. So serving is very blissful, serving the deity, that one-to-one contact with the Archa Vigraha, the deity form of the Lord, is very, very sweet, normally we always sit behind this, we're on this side of the curtain just kind of chanting our rounds or doing the Guru Puja or whatever it is. When you go on the other side and you're dressing the deities and you're looking right in their face, you're touching their feet, you're switching their crowns around and all these kind of things, and especially they're putting them to rest and different things, are very, very wonderful, and of course many devotees can vouch for that experience. And of course even the simple, the so-called simple things, the menial tasks in devotional service are nectar. Sweeping the floors, putting the bins out, cleaning up the kitchen, these are all things that cleanse the heart. The Gundicha margin, cleaning pastime was done by Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because he wanted to show what it takes to clean the heart, how much you've got to clean, and also that humility as well. The Supreme Lord himself was the biggest cleaner. His dirt pile was the most, So and we used to hear from Jayananda Prabhu, the famous Jayananda Prabhu, ISKCON's first pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada called him. That he was always doing the bins. He was doing the dishes. He was going out and doing car fixing, and he made the first Rath carts. Hence the reason why his picture is up there on the Rath cart. And devotees were joining and saying, "Oh my God, if he's just the bin man, my God, he's so ecstatic. This Krishna consciousness is something else." So we relish pleasure from the service itself, and in the mature stage, they are actually situated in love of God. So this is, it's a key thing, that you're enjoying the service, you're enjoying the happiness that comes, and then you actually become situated in love of Krishna. It develops to that stage. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities travelling throughout the different planets of the universe, and out of them there are a few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. Now there's a little thing here in the Nectar of Devotion, also known as the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, written by Rupa Goswami but translated by our Srila Prabhupada. There are 9 stages of Bhakti Yoga. And it says, Shraddha, faith, Sadhu Sangha, association with devotees, and in this sowing the seed, Bhajana Kriya, performance of devotional service, Anartha Nivritti, decreasing of unwanted attachments, Nishta, steadiness, Ruchi, taste, Ashakti, attachment, Bhava, love, and Prema, pure love for Krishna. So the quicker we can rise up these stages, the more to that degree we can just completely let go any material difficulty. Now, of course, these ones at the bottom there, the first kind of 4 or 5 is where you're floating about, and you can kind of go up and down a little bit. You can fly back and forth between them, you know. Certainly faith we should have very quickly once we start to see what Krishna consciousness is, get into associating with the devotees, enjoy the presence of the temple and the prasadam and all these kind of things. So that's the sadhu sangha bit as well. The bhajana kriya is then when you actually start to take initiation. You're making the vows, you're making big steps. Then comes an artha-nivritti, the long haul, you know, letting go of the unwanted things in the heart. We need to rise through that as quick as possible. So it's like sowing a seed and not, you know, and watering it carefully, not destroying your garden, especially with what's called the hati mata, or the elephant offense, you know, Vaishnav aparad, offending the devotees, you know. That just completely wastes everything you've done. It does not, of course, take away, you know, but it may freeze or put you on hold for quite a long time. No one likes getting put on hold. You go on a phone call to your bank or something, you know, and they put you on hold. Even worse if they put you on hold without telling you. So normally you get some nice hold music and you're sitting there on the phone and it's do 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 do, and you're just kind of sitting there and you're thinking, this is great, I'm on hold. I know she told, you know, they do all these kind of scripts and stuff. They say, okay, I'm just going to pop you on hold just for 2 minutes and I'll come back to you, and if I haven't solved it yet I'll check in with you, you know. It's stuff like that, you know. I used to work in a bank myself, you know. So they check in with you every 2 minutes just to make sure you're not going to complain at the end of the call, you know. And then your query is solved, you know. But you hate getting put on hold. But sometimes if you're put on hold and, you know, they haven't told you and it just goes, everything just sounds like it's dead, and you think, oh, they've hung up on me, and you call again, start again, right? So if we destroy our creeper of devotional service, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the language is used as this creeper, a creeper, you know. You sow the seed and it becomes a creeper, but it can also get entangled in weeds. Don't water the weeds and don't destroy the garden, you know. Quite interesting language, actually, you know, used in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. You know, don't put yourself on hold and then have to call back again, you know, because you may have to wait longer in the queue in this material world. Indra Swami said once in an old lecture I heard years ago, he said, don't take the risk that because you perform devotional service, you'll just, you know, come back again and start off from there. Or what happens to the wavering soul who, on, you know, trying his spiritual path, falls away and doesn't make it, right? Arjuna asks that question, and Krishna says, well, you know, they'll come back again either in a rich family of aristocracy, or they'll be born into a pious family and just start off their Krishna consciousness again from there. You know, my dad used to talk about that. He says, if we don't go back to Godhead in this lifetime, hopefully we'll be born in the ching ching ching, you know, meaning the karatals. We'll come back right into a Krishna conscious family. But Indra Swami says, don't take that chance. Kali Yuga will be so much worse, you know, down the line, you know. So whatever family you come back into, you have to go through all that same punishment again. You know, and of course Prabhupada describes it himself as well, going back into the womb, the horrible condition in the womb, you know, and then going through childhood. You know, today I was out walking with my kids, you know. I took her for a walk and was just playing in the park. And I was listening to these, I think they were probably about, you know, 12, 13, 14. And I was just looking at the little hierarchy. One was trying to act harder than the others, and he was squaring up to some of the others and trying to intimidate them. And some of them were kind of like, oh, you know. And I was thinking, wow, to go through all that nonsense again, you know. It's not worth it, you know. Be very careful and stick to our Krishna consciousness. You know, hold on to it dearly, the rare gem, you know. This devotional service is just like a seed, and it is sown in the heart of a living entity. And if he goes on hearing and chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that seed fructifies. Just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering, the spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahma Jyoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky also that plant grows more and more until it reaches the highest planet, which is called Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately the planet the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there. Gradually, as a plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits. And the watering process in the form of chanting and hearing goes on, right? So this was this analogy from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This plant of devotional service is described fully in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila chapter 19. So please go and read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and get into this nectarian discussion of, because we can understand here this is us becoming fixed in devotional service, by watering, by chanting, hearing, and to the point where we can then actually produce fruits. We can make devotees, we can spread Krishna consciousness with effect. Yeah? And it's explained there that when the complete plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in love of God. Then he cannot live even for a moment without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada was speaking to Christian ministers quite a lot. There's a lot of wonderful Prabhupada lectures where he's speaking to reverends from France and so on and so forth, or monks, Christian monks, different priests from all over the world. And one interview, they're saying, no, this was an American Christian this time, and he's saying, look at all these your boys and girls that are coming to your temple. They were our people. They were our Christian church people. And they never had any interest. Now look at them, they're mad after God. And Prabhupada said, yeah, why? Because this is this process has got them mad after God. They weren't interested. The churches were shutting down, devotees were buying up the churches for Prabhupada's temples, or we were having, so many times we see this, that we have a tendency in ISKCON for some reason to have our, what we call our Nam Hut, or our devotee programs in Quaker buildings or churches, or so on and so forth. For some reason we were able to use those facilities, and that's been going on since Prabhupada's time. Big abandoned churches become temples. What more can we say? The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees, as stated in the Bhagavatam itself, in the 12, 13, 18. So last canto of the Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. In this narration there is nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. So Prabhupada's compared, you can see that probably the ultimate pleasure in the material world is the sex life, or the attraction between man and woman, Both of them are okay, but they melt like butter when they come together, right? We hear that. Prabhupada used to say that man is okay, woman is okay, together, not okay, right? Two different kinds of conditionings, two different kinds of moods and desires, both clash, bang smash, Material world, happiness in the material world, we always see, this is my favourite one, I keep always saying that happiness in the material world, very little of it, was a quote from a great senior Vaishnav many years ago. So Prabhupada saying that the pleasure of association between a young boy and young girl, you can imagine, you see, it's the driving force in the material world, man and woman glancing, making the gestures, trying so hard in many ways to get each other's association, the clothes, the perfumes, smelling nice, looking nice, speaking in a certain way, getting that job, getting that car, such an effort to maintain these things. So Prabhupada saying, that is, the pleasure that we can actually truly take is in Krishna consciousness, and it's like a continual pleasure, just as, it seems in one sense, of course, the material sense, that it's like a continuous pleasure when you're glancing into that loving partner's eyes and you've achieved your desire, so to speak. And one last point was I wanted to kind of highlight a little story of an exalted devotee. I'm aware that, of course, this class has been longer than the usual ones, so if you ever get to this part, thank you for bearing with me. As an exalted devotee, this is King Rantidev. Rantidev Maharaj was a very advanced devotee, and he directly perceived Krishna, and he was an eternal associate of the Lord. And it says that his mind and body was really, because he was a king, body was so austere, and he fasted for 48 days. No food, no water. And his poor family, they were so humble and meek, they just went along with whatever he did, So they were also fasting almost to the brink of death. The whole body was. I heard this. I've read the pastime. It's there in the Bhagavad-Gita, but I was just hearing it again from Radhanath Swami. He was saying the bodily organs were collapsing. They were just on the verge of death. So when they had actually said, okay, now we can break our fast, there was some food and some water and some different stuff. When they were about to eat, a Brahmin came by. And he said, oh, can I beg some alms, Rantidev perceived the hand of the Supreme Person of Godhead. So he was like, oh, I must offer service to this Brahmin. Gives him some portion of the food, dishes out some portion, the Brahmin takes and then goes, wow, thank you so much. And then now they're about to eat. And then a Shudra comes along, lower class now. Not a Brahmin this time, not an advanced devotee or anything like that. A lower than the king even now. At least the Brahmin was an advisor to the Kshatriya class. Now we're saying, okay, a Shudra, just a worker, so to speak. He comes along. He gives him also, he says, I need something, please give me something. Okay, take, And then someone else comes along and says, oh, my dogs and I are hungry. Okay, give them some portion. And the last and final straw, a Chandala, the untouchable caste, lowest of the lowest, according to the caste system and so on and so forth in the Vedic culture. I need some drink. All that was left was some drinking water, barely a drop, enough to quench. Please, can I have some water? Okay, you quench your thirst, And then, who then suddenly appears? Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and some other senior demigods. They had took the forms because they wanted to test if his pure devotion was real. And Maharaj mentions this, Radha Swami mentions that surrender comes when you actually are giving something up, when you're really sweating it out a little bit, And of course they then said, you can have anything you want, you can have boons, you can have anything from us. And he just puts his hands up and says, just let me pray to the Supreme Person of Godhead. Because he doesn't want anything from the demigods. We've been hearing about this. Again, recently Prabhupada's been emphasizing the point, don't go to the demigods, don't worship the demigods above Krishna, don't ask for benedictions from them, focus on Krishna only. The pure devotee thinks about Krishna 24/7, not the demigods, not any other man, not his pets, not his families, all these things. It's Krishna consciousness, So there was Maharaj Rantidev, he passed the test with flying colours, because even when he was offered the benedictions, he said, Hare Krishna, I simply want to be connected to the Supreme Person of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.